Okay, are you ready? It's time for a new month. Here we are, February 2025. My goodness. We're going to be setting up our monthly spread by beginning to think about the types of elements and visuals that we might want to include in the month. It's helpful to just think about the kind of vibe, the overall experience that you might be anticipating for the course of the month. If you have, for instance, a lot of work or a lot of travel, or if there's a project you want to be focused on, you might want to incorporate that into your spread. I do recommend going back and looking at any previous spreads that you might have. I am here looking at January's setup just as a sort of inspiration to myself of what I liked, what I didn't like, what I might want to carry over. Overall, I was really happy with this spread for January, so I think I'm going to be using a lot of the same type of elements when it comes to my next spread. I might just remix it a little bit. Of course, you know I've got to come in here in pencil at the beginning because you have to get a picture of your overall page, how the layout is going to be, and part of this is just determining where all of the stuff lays on your pages. So in order to get that concept of the different zones and the sort of space that you're going to need to reserve for different areas, working in pencil is definitely best, as you can see exemplified by the fact that I run out of space here. It's the worst, but actually it's not because I'm just in pencil. So when I come back in pen, I'll be able to sort of make up that space there. It's always wise to reference the future log for a couple of reasons. I am looking at it here to determine how many weeks I have in this particular month because I'm going to be setting up sort of a mini calendar here, and also the way that I configure my habit trackers is dependent on the shape of the month, how many weeks are in the month, and you'll see what I mean here. Setting up habit trackers can be a little tedious, but ultimately it's going to be worth it, so just keep going, right? Now, I like to think about the overall vibe and the shape of my page because I'm thinking how I actually want to configure those habit trackers on the page itself. I know there's a lot of different ways you can set this up, but I do like to do mine in a sort of calendar shape that I'm able to fill in every day as I go. So I'm making sure that I have the space that I need to place those on the page, and also to have a little bit of space to add in some of the visual elements that I have in mind. For these particular habit trackers, I've decided I'm going to do, in my mind, I think of this as a mountain range. I just realized I thought about it like that. It's basically, I'm placing my trackers sort of in the corner in a almost step up shape so that I'm able to have some other elements and things in that space instead of just having a very big chunk where literally half of the page or a quarter of the page is devoted to habit trackers. Instead of that, I'm kind of doing a triangle in the corner. Now I'm including my lists, which I'm going to be turning into sort of specialized subsections. So I'm just mapping out again how I want the page to look overall. When we're thinking about decorative elements that we want to include in our spread, we have things like drawings, doodles, sketches, we have stickers or washi tape. There can be more of a scrapbook element as well. You can also include quotes. There are so many different kinds of options of visual elements that you might want to add. For me, usually I tend to just really stick to drawings. I love the idea of stickers and washi tape, I really do. But when it comes to the functionality, I find it a lot easier and somehow just more satisfying, I guess, to do my own doodles and drawings and to write my own quotes. And I don't really like to pull from some pre-existing source. I want to be able to create something on the spot. So that's what I'm doing here. I chose the theme of candy because here in the US we have Valentine's Day in the month of February. So I thought that was kind of adjacent. It was seasonal adjacent of a subject for me to draw. And when it does come to those visual elements, if we were talking about a sketch or a quote, usually I will reference online sources so that I can get an idea of what other people have done, ways that I might want to execute something. If, for example, I'm thinking I want to doodle candy, and in my mind I think of lollipops and candy bars, but if when I go and do a search instead I get ideas about donuts and Twix and popcorn, who knows, whatever, there's so many different ideas that you could come up with on that subject, then maybe I actually decide that I want to include those instead of the things that I had originally thought. So it's just fun. It's just fun to see what other people do, and that's why I myself am contributing myself with these videos, because I feel like I have a lot of experience in this realm and I just want to share some things that I do that maybe other people would want to benefit from or try out. Working with quotes is a similar concept. I will usually either bundle a quote in along with whatever visual theme I've already decided I wanted to have for the month, or maybe there's some seasonal aspect that makes me lean towards a certain person or a certain subject for a quote. Sometimes I don't include a quote at all, and you certainly don't have to. I decided for this month that I would, and I decided to actually take one of David Lynch's quotes. If you run in the kind of circles that I do, then you are probably aware that David Lynch, the famous director, passed away in the last month. So I thought I would commemorate him with a little quote in my journal, which is, "The whole world is wild at heart and weird on top." This quote really has nothing to do with anything, and that's why I like it, okay? It just kind of spoke to me. What I'll usually do is I'll do a search online, see what kind of more reputable quote sites, like Brainy Quote, for instance, what sites might have something of what I'm looking for as far as a author of a quote or a subject of a quote. I also will reference some of the books that I have on my shelf or some of the songs that I have on an endless catalog in my head, and I will just go from there. Now, as you can see, I've been placing the ink to get everything a little bit more finalized, a little bit more settled. Over here, I have various different sort of subsections. Now this is on the left, it's going to be a to-do list, and on the right I have section for goals, level 10 life, and monthly items that I like to keep track of. I've kind of come to this element, I guess you would say, in my monthlies. I think I experimented with it a little bit more last month in a way that I was satisfied with, where I wanted to be able to migrate more over into my monthly from my previous collections so that everything is a little bit more comprehensive and cohesive on that singular page. I really like to use my monthly spreads as a snapshot. It is my number one reference point for the entirety of the month. And I use that as kind of a compass when I'm making up all of the other spreads for my weeklies and so forth that come after. Now, don't say I didn't warn you that I was going to be bouncing all over the page. I definitely bounce all over the page for a couple of reasons. I have some really good reasons. One being that ink takes some time to dry, and I don't want to be getting my hand in ink and dragging it across the page, as you might imagine. So I will set up these different zones in ink after the pencil so that I can get everything oriented and come back in and put in my half dozen lines or whatever it is that I need to do. I also will place my calendar view here for the month within the spread. I like to do this just because visually it makes sense to me. There's all kinds of ways to do a calendar in your monthly. I've settled on this little version that I've been using for years now. So this works for me because, like I said, I can visualize when the weekends are. If there's a holiday, I can see what day of the week that falls on. I can just reference that calendar in a glance of my month, but I also can take a highlighter and run through there if I want to mark days that I might be on vacation or days of my cycle or whatever it is that I want to kind of reference multiple days in a row. That's very easy to do too without having to go back into my yearly view and put something in there that is just going to end up eventually looking really cluttered. So it helps me to track the minutia a little bit better. I try not to flip my journal too much upside down while I'm filming because I just think that for you guys it might be visually confusing, but for me this is how I will usually do it myself. So sorry, I really had to do what worked for me here to churn out these habit trackers. Now you can see how it's beginning to come together. You can see that I utilize the shape of the month to create my various different trackers. Just like everything else, there's a lot of ways to do this. This is just the way that I've settled on that both visually and functionally works the best for me right now. Some people also will have a specific page devoted to habit tracking. I really try to avoid that because to me it just seems like a lot of extra use of space, and it just seems like more pages I have to make sure that I'm going back and referencing on a daily basis. If you happen to be wondering what that big rectangle is underneath the title there, it is a place for me to utilize at the end of the month when I come back in and finish up the spread. In the meantime, this will remain a blank space, so I like to reserve that space for myself in the future. Sometimes I'll decorate this box and sometimes I won't, but this is a place for me to put in my sticker printer paper. I have a little mini printer that is able to print out a photo that I want to commemorate for whatever reason from the course of the month. So in this way, this is where my scrapbooking and memory keeping element comes in. So later when I'm looking through my journal, I am able to see all of these different memories and kind of recall what was going on during that month and where I was or who I was with. So now I'm really closing in on finishing up the most important parts of the spread, which is all of this pencil and ink work. After this, I will come back with some colors and make it a little more vibrant and fun. I might add a couple of more doodles here, but for now I need to title my various portions so I know what's what. So I have my to-dos, my goals, my level 10 life, and my monthly items. For all of these sections, I will be referencing prior collections and my future log to make sure that I'm pulling over everything that is going to be appropriate for the month. I am also going to be filling out my various habit trackers so that I know exactly what it is that I'm going to be following along with. And just like that, the monthly spread for February is ready to go. It's fully colored and filled out, and all I need to do now is bring in those final migrations. Let me know in the comments what kind of elements you're including in your journal setup for this month, and do be sure to subscribe so you can be notified when I make any further uploads. Have a wonderful month, and I'll see you soon.